Hey beautiful souls, welcome back to Vintage Mike Tales. If you're new here, grab a cozy seat because you're about to dive into a story full of heart, passion and unforgettable moments. Let's feel every word together. The ballroom shimmered like a dream spun from gold, crystal chandeliers dripping elegance from the ceiling and casting warm, glowing light on the sea of gowns and tuxedos below. The gala was in full swing. Laughter bubbled through champagne flutes. Live jazz hummed through the air, and clinking glasses punctuated soft conversations. But Tracy Williams wasn't here for any of that. She tugged slightly at the side of her sapphire blue gown, uncomfortable in the fitted dress that did nothing to hide her curves. Her curls were pinned up into a classic twist, her makeup flawless. But she still felt like a nurse playing dress-up. Her best friend, Simone, had dragged her to this charity gala for the hospital's children's wing, promising her a glamorous night with good causes and potential husbands. Tracy had rolled her eyes but showed up anyway, mostly for the free wine. She moved to the edge of the room, sipping slowly and trying not to check the time. As she scanned the crowd, her eyes landed on him. Across the ballroom, near the grand piano, stood a man who looked as if he didn't belong either. He wasn't talking, he wasn't laughing. He wasn't even trying, just quietly watching the room, like he was searching for something or someone. Jimmy Caldwell had come out of politeness, not excitement, as the heir to the Caldwell fortune, a real estate empire in Georgia. He was used to events like this. Handshakes, fake smiles, women introducing themselves with hyphenated last names and subtle ambition. But tonight, none of that mattered. His father was ill, his family was tense, and his heart felt strangely hollow. He didn't expect to find anything meaningful in a room filled with glitter and masks, until he saw her. Their eyes met just for a second, but it was enough. He didn't smile at first. Neither did she. It was like a moment of recognition between strangers who somehow already knew each other. Tracy blinked, looked away, then looked again. He was still watching, and now smiling. She turned toward Simone and said, "Don't look now. But a fine white man is staring at me like I'm the last piece of cake at a southern wedding." Simone whipped around before Tracy could stop her. "Oh, girl, he's coming this way. I'm out." Before Tracy could protest, Simone disappeared into the crowd, leaving her with a thumping heart and half a wine glass. And then he was in front of her. "Hi," he said, voice calm, deep, with a slightly southern drawl that wrapped around her name before he even asked it. "I'm Jimmy, Tracy," she replied. "And yes, I'm real." Jimmy chuckled. "I was starting to wonder. This place feels like a movie set." They stood there, two people from different worlds, strangers held together by a magnetic thread neither could see or name. "Do you like jazz?" he asked. "Depends. If it's the type that makes me feel like I'm in a black and white movie, then yes." He grinned. "Want to dance and test the theory?" She paused, heart racing. "Why not?" He took her hand, warm, firm, steady, and led her onto the dance floor just as the band shifted into a sultry, slow tune. As they danced, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder, his on her waist, Tracy felt an ease she hadn't known in years. They didn't speak much, just small questions. "Do you work in the city?" "Yes, pediatric nurse." "Wow, that explains the heart." "And you?" He hesitated. "Family business," he said vaguely, "but I paint when I can. Watercolors, mostly landscapes." She raised a brow. "So you're a secret artist in a tux?" He smiled. "Only for special occasions." The song faded, but neither of them moved. "You want to get some air?" he asked. She nodded. Out on the balcony, the city stretched beneath them like a sea of diamonds. Cool wind tousled her curls, and Jimmy slipped off his jacket and placed it over her shoulders. His scent lingered, clean, woodsy, something like cedar and salt. "You're not like most people here," she said softly. He glanced at her. "Neither are you." They stood in silence, the kind that didn't demand conversation. She didn't know what made her say it. Maybe it was the stars. Maybe it was the wine, but she whispered, "You ever feel like you've been waiting for someone, but you didn't know who?" He turned to face her fully. "All the time," he said, "until now." Her breath caught. His gaze didn't waver, the way he looked at her, like she mattered, like he saw every scar and still found beauty. It scared her and thrilled her all at once. "I don't usually say things like that," he added. Me neither, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Their hands touched again. Electric, familiar. Somewhere in the ballroom. Applause erupted, but out here, the world had narrowed to just the two of them. Can I see you again? He asked. Tracy hesitated. I don't do casual. He stepped closer. Neither do I. I've been hurt, she confessed. So have I. She searched his face for a sign, an ego. A game, a lie, but found none. Just honesty. And something deeper. Hope. She nodded slowly. Okay. He smiled. Relief flooding his face. Okay, they exchanged numbers. The kind of moment people write songs about. He kissed her hand before letting go. Back inside, the music swelled. They walked in together. People watched, whispered, but neither of them cared. Later that night in her bedroom, Tracy sat on her bed in her robe, phone in hand, replaying the night. The warmth in her chest scared her. She'd just met him. She didn't even know his last name. Yet something told her she knew his soul. Across town, Jimmy stared out of his penthouse window, moonlight on his face, a rare smile tugging at his lips. He whispered her name like a prayer, Tracy, and felt something settle inside him. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't lust. It was peace. It was knowing. Two souls that had been circling each other for lifetimes had finally met, and neither of them would ever be the same again. The days following the gala felt like a dream Tracy never wanted to wake from. Jimmy called the next morning. Not with a casual hey, but with a heartfelt, I can't stop thinking about you. And from there, their connection deepened like an ocean, calm on the surface but rich, endless and impossible to resist. They met often, long walks through Piedmont Park, dinners where the world outside disappeared, stolen kisses on street corners that made her knees weak. Jimmy wasn't just sweet, he was attentive, present, curious about her life. He'd bring her lunch at the hospital, ask about her patients, listen as she talked about her dreams and struggles. Tracy had never felt so seen, so chosen. But fairy tales don't last forever, and reality was knocking. It began with a simple request. Come meet my family this weekend, Jimmy said one evening as they sat on her couch, his head in her lap, her fingers trailing through his hair. We're having dinner at the estate. I want them to meet the woman who turned my world upside down. Tracy froze. The estate. He sat up. Yeah, just a family dinner. My mom will be polite, formal maybe. But Jimmy, she said quietly, do they know I'm black? He hesitated. No, but they will. She stared at him. And you think that won't be a problem? He reached for her hand. I think you're brilliant. Compassionate and beautiful. If they can't see that, it's their problem, not ours. She wanted to believe him so badly. But the moment she stepped into the Caldwell estate, a marble mansion, tucked into the hills of Buckhead, she knew. The air was cold, not from the temperature, but from the silence that fell the second she walked in. Eleanor Caldwell, Jimmy's mother, was all pearls and posture, her smile brittle, her handshake soft but dismissive. And who are you, dear? She asked, as though Tracy were a +1 who'd wandered in uninvited. Tracy Williams. Tracy replied, standing tall. It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Caldwell. Eleanor said with a tight nod. Williams. Any relation to Marcus Williams? Tracy blinked. He was my father. The room fell colder. Eleanor's lips tightened like a purse string. Interesting. Later, over dinner, Jimmy leaned in and whispered, Ignore her, please. She'll warm up. But Eleanor never did. She asked Tracy, passive-aggressive questions. Do you plan to keep working after marriage, and what will you do if Jimmy's business takes him abroad? Layered with fake smiles and thinly veiled condescension, Tracy answered with grace. But inside her stomach churned. Then came the blow after dessert. Eleanor asked to speak to Jimmy alone. Tracy stepped out onto the patio to give them space. Through the glass, she saw Eleanor gesturing sharply. Jimmy's jaw clenched. When he came back out, his face was pale. She doesn't approve, he said simply. Tracy laughed bitterly. Of me, of us, of everything. He looked away. There's more. What? She said, your father nearly destroyed our company years ago. He was the lead contractor on a project that collapsed financially. My dad lost millions. Lawsuits dragged on for years, Tracy swallowed. My dad was a good man. He worked hard. I don't know the full story, but I know he wasn't some villain. Jimmy stepped closer. I believe you. But they don't, she whispered. He shook his head. I don't care what they think. I love you. Her eyes welled. Do you? Yes, he said fiercely. I do. Then let's leave. Tonight, start fresh. He froze. I can't, he said, not yet. My dad's health is declining. The business needs me. If I leave now, it'll be chaos. And if I stay, she asked, voice cracking. He took her face in his hands. We'll figure it out, please, just give me time. But time became tension. Every phone call turned into an argument. Tracy couldn't ignore the weight of Eleanor's disapproval. The way Jimmy flinched whenever she mentioned visiting again. It was like a shadow crept into their love. Slow, steady, suffocating, her mother noticed first. You're not smiling like you used to, she said one Sunday morning. Watching Tracy sip coffee at the kitchen table. That boy giving you grief? Tracy sighed. It's his family. They think I'm beneath them. Or a reminder of something ugly. Her mother reached across the table. Love is fire, baby. It can warm you or burn you. You got to decide which one you're in. Days later, Tracy found herself back in that park where they first kissed under moonlight. Jimmy was already there, pacing. I can't lose you, he said as soon as he saw her. You're not fighting for me. She said, not really, that's not fair. Isn't it? She cut in. You keep saying you love me, but you won't stand up to them. You won't walk away. You want me to wait in the shadows? While your mother keeps looking at me like, I'm a stain on your family name. I'm trying, he pleaded. It's not enough, she whispered. Love isn't just words, Jimmy, it's choices. Sacrifice, he stepped forward, tears threatening. Then tell me what to do, choose, she said. Your family's pride. Or us, silence stretched between them, and when he didn't answer, she turned and walked away. He didn't follow that night. Tracy cried into her pillow until her body ached. Jimmy sat alone in his room, staring at the picture of them in the park, laughing, free, whole, and felt like he'd just lost a part of his soul. Two hearts, one love, torn apart by pride and pain. But the story wasn't over, not yet. 3 months. That's how long it had been since Tracy last saw Jimmy. 90 days of silence. 90 nights of trying to forget someone whose laughter still echoed in her bones. She told herself she was fine. She told Simone she had moved on. She told her heart to be quiet every time it beat his name into her chest like a prayer. But deep down, Tracy knew. Her love hadn't dimmed. It had just gone quiet, waiting for a sign. A breath, a miracle. Life went on, of course. She poured herself into her work at the hospital, pulling extra shifts in the pediatric ward. She smiled for the kids, made jokes, danced in hallways with toddlers dragging IV poles. But every time a parent held their child close, or a couple kissed in the waiting room, she felt it, that hollow ache sometimes late at night. She would lie in bed with her phone in hand, staring at Jimmy's contact, her thumb hovering over the call button, but she never pressed it. He hadn't called either, still. She knew he hadn't forgotten, because love that real doesn't just disappear across the city in a Manhattan high-rise. Jimmy Caldwell stood in front of a canvas, brush in hand, eyes blank. His business trip to New York had been extended. He told himself it was for work. But the truth was simpler. He couldn't bear to stay in Atlanta, not without her. He painted when he couldn't sleep. Skies, rivers, gardens, every canvas blurred with the colors of her. Sometimes her silhouette would emerge, curves he'd memorized, eyes he couldn't forget. He never signed those, Lauren, his sister, noticed the change in him first. She flew to New York under the guise of visiting, but stared him down at dinner. You miss her, she said plainly. He didn't answer. You're miserable, she added. I made my choice. He said, no, you made their choice. Jimmy dropped his fork. I get it, she said softly. Mom can be cruel, but Jimmy, do you really think she's going to be the one holding your hand when you're 70, laughing with you when your hair turns gray? He looked away. She's the kind of love that doesn't come twice. Lauren continued, and you let her walk away. A week later, Lauren visited Atlanta. She stopped by the hospital where Tracy worked. Claiming she was in the area, Tracy met her in the staff lounge, stunned and guarded. I'm not here to cause problems, Lauren said. I just wanted to say thank you. Tracy blinked. For what? For loving my brother the way you did. Tracy looked down, did. Lauren smiled gently. Do. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded sketch. He drew this the week after you left. Tracy opened it slowly. It was a watercolor of the bench in Piedmont Park where they first kissed. bathed in evening light, empty but still alive. Tears welled in her eyes. "He still loves you," Lauren said quietly. "He's just too proud and too broken to fix it." Tracy nodded, blinking back the emotion. "Thanks for coming." As Lauren left, she whispered, "Don't give up on him." Even if he's given up on himself. Tracy didn't reach out. Not yet, but the painting stayed folded in her bag, worn soft by her fingers, like a secret she couldn't let go of. Time moved, but her heart didn't, and neither did his. One night in New York, Jimmy stood on a rooftop, looking over the skyline, empty glass in his hand. His phone buzzed, a photo. It was Tracy, sleeping on a hospital bench, still in her scrubs, a child's blanket draped over her lap. Her head rested on a pillow made from folded coats, and her expression was peaceful, exhausted. "Beautiful," Lauren's message read. "She still loves you. She just doesn't believe you'll fight for her." Jimmy stared at the screen until his vision blurred. Then, without hesitation, he booked a flight home. Tracy was walking to her car after a long shift when she saw him. Jimmy stood at the edge of the parking lot, hands in his coat pockets, eyes locked on her like she was the only light in the world. She froze. They hadn't spoken in months. Her heart thundered. He walked slowly toward her, step by step, never breaking eye contact. When he stopped in front of her, neither of them spoke for a long moment. Then, "I never stopped loving you," he said quietly. Her lips trembled. "Why now?" "Because I finally realized silence isn't strength. Walking away doesn't protect love, it buries it." He swallowed hard. "And I'd rather lose everything else than live without you." She blinked quickly. "Fighting tears, you hurt me, I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. If you let me." She looked away, then back at him. "Your mother, she doesn't get a vote anymore." They stood there, hearts beating loud enough to drown out the world. "I wrote you letters," she whispered. "I never sent them. I painted you into everything," he replied, and none of it was enough. Slowly, carefully, he reached out and took her hand. "Let me come home," he said, "not just to the city." To you, she looked at their hands, familiar, trembling, and nodded. "I never stopped loving you either." Later that night, as they sat on her couch, he handed her a small box. Inside was a tiny framed version of the watercolor painting. "I made it smaller so you could carry it," he said. She smiled through tears. "I already do," he tilted his head. "What?" She pulled her bag to her lap and unzipped it, revealing the worn, folded paper, his painting. He stared at it, stunned. "You kept it?" he asked every day. In that moment, words failed them, so they leaned into the silence, lips meeting softly, broken pieces finding their way back together. It wasn't a grand reunion. No fireworks, no speeches, just two people who had been to hell and back. Finding their way home, their love hadn't faded. It had waited. Because true devotion doesn't quit. It doesn't vanish, it stays. Even when hearts break, even when words fail. Even when time passes, it stays. Love had brought them back together, but life wasn't waiting with open arms. The reunion between Tracy and Jimmy was real, raw and overflowing with renewed passion, but the world outside their embrace remained unchanged. If anything, it had become more challenging. The morning after their first night together again, Tracy stirred awake to the scent of coffee. Jimmy stood in her kitchen barefoot, wearing one of her oversized t-shirts and humming an old Sam Cooke song. She couldn't help but smile. It felt normal, safe, like no time had passed. But as they sat across from each other at the table, Tracy grew serious. "I have to tell you something," she said. Fingers curled around her mug. Jimmy looked up. "They're closing the pediatric wing." His expression fell. "What?" "The hospital says there's not enough funding. They're transferring patients, laying off nurses." She took a deep breath. "I'm fighting it, but I'm exhausted, Jimmy." He reached for her hand. "What can I do?" She shrugged. "It's not your fight." "It is now," and it was. Jimmy began making phone calls, using contacts from his business network. He knew developers, philanthropists, politicians. He organized a fundraiser, hosted meetings, even pulled in Lauren to help promote the cause. He didn't just love Tracy, he stood beside her. But even with their united front, they hit wall after wall. One night, after another rejected grant application, Tracy collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "I feel like I'm drowning," she whispered. Jimmy sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her. "We'll build you a life raft." He kissed her forehead and held her as her body trembled. "You don't have to be strong all the time." She leaned into him. "I've never had anyone fight this hard for me." "You've always deserved it," he said. While they faced battles together, Jimmy was fighting another war on a different front, his family. When he returned to the Caldwell estate, the air was thick with tension. His father, Richard, now thin and pale from his illness, greeted him with a weak smile. But Eleanor didn't say a word. It wasn't until dinner that she finally spoke. "I heard you're seeing her again." He didn't flinch. "I am." Eleanor's knife clinked against her plate. "So you've decided to throw your future away? For a woman who comes from disgrace?" Jimmy set his fork down. "Don't talk about Tracy like that. She's not like us." "No, she's better," he said, calm but firm. "She works harder, loves deeper, and stands taller than anyone I know, including you." The silence was thunderous. Richard coughed softly. "Son, I'm not asking for permission," Jimmy continued. "I'm asking you to be decent." Eleanor stood up abruptly and left the table. Jimmy remained seated, fists clenched. His father spoke quietly. "She'll come around. Or she won't. But I'm proud of you." It was the first time he'd heard that in years. Back in Tracy's world, things didn't get easier. One of her favorite patients, a little girl named Maya, was being transferred to another hospital. Tracy tried to keep it together, smiling and hugging the child tightly. But when the ambulance doors closed, she broke down in the stairwell, heart shattering. That night, Jimmy took her to a quiet place, an empty lot downtown, with old brick walls and tangled vines. He handed her a key. "What is this?" "Our future," he said. "I bought it." She blinked. "You what?" "This building's been abandoned for years. But with the right renovation, it could be a children's clinic." "Your clinic?" Her eyes widened. "Jimmy, I know it won't fix everything, but it's a start. We'll call it the Maya Center, in honor of the kids you never stopped fighting for." Tears filled her eyes. "You're serious?" He nodded. "I've never been more." She launched into his arms, sobbing into his chest. Love isn't just about kisses and promises. It's about sacrifice, support, showing up again and again, even when the world is falling apart. But not everyone wanted to see them happy. A news article surfaced, an op-ed that targeted Jimmy's decision to date outside of tradition and disrespect his family legacy. Though unsigned, the tone had Eleanor written all over it. Tracy saw it during a lunch break. Her hands trembled as she read. When Jimmy arrived to pick her up, she threw the paper at him. "I'm tired," she snapped. "Tired of defending who I am. Tired of pretending like love is enough to silence this kind of hate." He looked at her with pain in his eyes. "You shouldn't have to defend anything." "Then why do I feel like I'm always one step away from being unwanted?" He stepped forward. "You are not unwanted. Not by me, never by me." She sank into his arms, sobbing. "This is hard, Jimmy. It's so damn hard." He kissed her hair. "I know. But I'm not leaving. Not this time. We'll weather every storm together." And they did. The fundraiser for the clinic began to gain traction. Jimmy's old friend, an investor with a heart for community, pledged a large donation. More followed. Tracy started seeing hope again, not just in her dreams but in numbers and blueprints. The night they broke ground on the building, they stood in the dirt, shovels in hand, reporters flashing cameras, community members cheering. Tracy looked at Jimmy and whispered, "You're my miracle." He smiled, "You're my home." But perhaps the truest moment came later that night, quiet and personal. Tracy received a letter. From Eleanor. It wasn't a grand apology. It wasn't poetic. But it was honest. "I still don't understand the choices you and Jimmy have made. But I see that you love him, and he loves you. For now, that will have to be enough." Tracy folded the letter and placed it in her drawer, not as a sign of surrender, but as a reminder, not all love stories come with easy approval. Some must be earned, one small step at a time. As autumn bled into winter, the clinic's foundation was poured. Walls went up. Color swatches and equipment lists were drawn. Jimmy and Tracy spent late nights in meetings and even later, nights tangled in each other's arms, laughing, healing, dreaming. They were scarred, tired, but still standing, still loving, still choosing each other every single day. Because love, when real, becomes more than just a feeling. It becomes the reason you keep fighting, even when everything tries to tear you apart. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of the nearly finished Maya Children's Wellness Center, warming the fresh-painted walls with a golden glow. Tracy stood at the front entrance in a white hard hat and jeans, holding a mug of coffee in one hand and a checklist in the other. The air smelled like fresh lumber and possibility. It had taken months of sweat, sleepless nights, community donations, and every ounce of strength she had, but the dream was finally real. The ribbon cutting was just 2 weeks away. She heard familiar footsteps behind her. "Good morning, Dr. Williams," Jimmy said, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. She laughed and replied that she wasn't a doctor. "You're a healer," he murmured. "You deserve the title." She leaned back against him, letting herself soak in the moment. This standing in the dream they built together was something she once thought impossible. "It still feels like I'm going to wake up," she whispered. "You're not," Jimmy said. "This is ours. You made this happen, Tracy." She turned to face him and said they made it happen. And he smiled that smile, the one that still made her breath catch, the one that had drawn her in the first time they danced under those gala lights. 2 weeks later, the grand opening was standing room only. News crews, city council, families, friends, and children who had once filled Tracy's hospital ward now ran down the hallway. Touching the colorful walls and giggling at the butterfly murals, Tracy gave a speech that left the audience misty-eyed. "This center is not just a building," she said, voice trembling. "It's a promise. That every child matters. That love, when poured into something selfless, creates miracles." Jimmy stood in the back, heart full, eyes never leaving her. After the ceremony, Lauren came over and whispered if he was ready. He nodded. Lauren cleared her throat and handed him something small, a velvet box. Tracy blinked, confused. The crowd suddenly quieted as Jimmy stepped forward, nervous but glowing. He said he thought about proposing there because the center was a symbol of everything they had fought for. But then he realized she wasn't just his fight. She was his peace, his home. Gasps and a few sniffles echoed in the room. He opened the box to reveal a simple, stunning ring, a rose gold band, with a vintage-cut diamond nestled at its heart. "I love you," Jimmy said, "through every silence, every storm, every scar. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving that to you. Tracy Williams, will you marry me?" Tears poured freely down her cheeks as she laughed and nodded. "Yes. Yes. 1,000 times yes." The room erupted into applause. Kids clapped and danced. Simone, somewhere in the crowd, screamed that that was her girl. And just like that, what was once a dream became a new chapter. The wedding planning was quick but meaningful. Tracy didn't want extravagant. She wanted warmth, love, community, and joy. They chose a historic church downtown with wide, stained glass windows and exposed brick that whispered stories of generations past. The ceremony was filled with soul and soul food. White roses lined the aisles. A gospel choir hummed as guests arrived. Tracy wore a lace-trimmed off-shoulder gown that flowed like poetry, her curls crowned in a halo of baby's breath. Jimmy wore a tailored navy suit with a matching handkerchief, embroidered with her initials. As she walked down the aisle on her mother's arm, all Jimmy could do was cry, not because he was sad, but because everything, the pain, the separation, the struggle, had led to this perfect moment. He saw her not just as the love of his life, but as the woman who taught him how to be brave. Their vows were raw and beautiful. Tracy whispered that she loved him. Before she knew, she could and would love him even after forever. Jimmy held her hand tightly and said she healed more than just children. She healed him, taught him that love doesn't shrink to fit the world. It expands to change it. They kissed, and the choir burst into a joyful hymn that made the stained glass sparkle with color. Their reception was a blend of cultures, families, and laughter. The menu featured fried catfish, collard greens, honey cornbread, chicken marsala, and spinach-stuffed ravioli. A line dance followed by a waltz. Southern charm met soulful fire. To everyone there, it wasn't just a wedding. It was a homecoming. Later that night, as they slow danced under fairy lights in the courtyard, Tracy laid her head on Jimmy's shoulder and asked if he thought they were always meant to find each other. Jimmy looked at her and said, "Absolutely." "But what if we hadn't?" she asked. He leaned down, kissing her gently, and told her they would. "They've searched and waited and found each other. Anyway, because love like this doesn't fade, it finds a way. They stood there, wrapped in each other, while the world moved quietly around them. The final scene of their love story didn't end with fireworks. It ended on a quiet evening in their backyard. Months later, as Tracy sat under a warm blanket, her belly softly round, listening to Jimmy hum to the growing life inside her. "Do you think they'll have your eyes?" she asked. He smiled and said he hoped they'd have her heart. The stars above twinkled like old friends, and Tracy, her head resting on the man she had once thought she'd lost forever, whispered, "Thank you for choosing me every time." Jimmy kissed her temple and replied, "Always. Because true love doesn't always come easy. It doesn't always arrive with a bow. Sometimes it breaks, separates, tests you. But when it's real, it survives. It fights, it waits, and in the end it finds its way home forever." Thank you so much for being here and showing love to Vintage. Mike Tales, your support means everything. Every view, every comment, every moment you spend with these stories keeps this channel going strong. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a story that moves your heart. You're truly appreciated. Vintage Mike Tales.